unprecedented levels, this chart is very helpful to sort of, in the United States, we say the proof is in the pudding. In the pink square on the left, all of these states have reduced both crime rates and their incarceration rates. So crime and incarceration can be reduced simultaneously. And this is a geographically and politically diverse group of states that have already proven that you don't need to build more prisons to reduce crime. This is a similar map, but just contains states that have reduced their violent crime rates while also reducing their state imprisonment rates. And almost all of these states in the pink square on this chart have reduced their prison rates purposefully and thoughtfully with investment of resources into alternatives to incarceration, changes in their laws, and other changes in their criminal justice system to rethink how the criminal justice system is used. In the 2000s, 14 states, including California, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, and Texas, saw simultaneous declines in both incarceration and crime, and every single one of those states saw a decline in their violent crime rates as well. This demonstrates that substantial reductions in prison populations can be achieved without harmful effects on public safety. And to give you one example, in New York State, where I live, at one point New York City in the 1990s was the murder capital of the country. And crack cocaine was sold in many street corners in New York. The city itself was seen as very violent, and the state was suffering from a crime wave that mimicked much of what the rest of the country was also going through at the time. Since 2000, New York State has reduced its prison population by over 25%, and during that same time, crime has fallen by 28%. New York, among other things, reduced a very draconian law called the Rockefeller drug laws that previously had sent people who possessed small amounts of drugs to prison for very long periods of time. So with the repeal of that law, plus additional reforms, the state was able to start to significantly reduce its prison population. Additionally, many of you, I'm sure, have been studying or reading about what has been happening in California. California's imprisonment population has exploded since the mid-1970s, partly driven by sentencing policies such as the 3 strikes you're out provision that were enacted in the 1990s in an attempt to significantly reduce crime. With a prison population that increased by over 500% between 1980 to 2006, the state simply could not build prisons quickly enough to accommodate the tremendous prison growth. As a result of this growth, the United States Supreme Court recently ordered California to reduce the number of inmates in its state prisons, not to result in undercapacity, but to ensure that these prisons were only a little bit over capacity. That's how bad the overcrowding problem in California is right now. And after recent reform in California called realignment, which attempts to deal with the court orders, and some recent ballot initiatives, this state has started to reduce its prison population and significantly, crime has also fallen in California by about 26% since the year 2000. And another state that we always point out when we talk about how it is possible to reduce crime and prison is Texas. And the reason why we talk about Texas is because it's a very conservative, tough on crime state. And Texas was able to reduce its prison population by 20%, while crime fell by over 25% since 2000. How did Texas do so? They were facing budget shortfalls in 2009, and they had a choice. They could either build new prisons or they could invest in alternatives to incarceration, and they picked the latter. So in 2009, Texas spent millions of dollars to increase the number of drug treatment beds in facilities, in prisons, in addition to increasing the number of drug treatment options in the community. And Texas was able to save money, send less people to prison, and also see reduced crime rates at the same time. So most of our report is spent on examining incarceration's impact on crime. However, we didn't want to stop there, because if incarceration is not the significant driver in reducing crime, we were left with the question, well, what is? How can you successfully reduce crime without using incarceration? So we looked at criminal justice policies, environmental and social factors, and economic factors. So this chart that you're looking at now indicates all of the theories that we examined as part of this research. The theories, if you can see this far, with the stars, are the theories where we could not secure state-level data from all 50 states. So for inflation, consumer confidence, decreased crack use, legalized abortion, and decreased lead in gasoline, we either did not feel comfortable with our results because we didn't think we had enough data, or we simply couldn't secure the necessary data. So with those examples, we read the previous empirically, what we felt was empirically sound peer-reviewed research, and relied on previous research to either indicate what impact we thought those theories had on crime, or simply stated that they could have made some impact on crime, but we weren't quite sure what that impact was. So I'm now going to speak about some of the theories that we examined, but not all of the theories, because I don't want to keep you here until dinner time. But I'm happy to answer any questions about other theories that you may have after the presentation. Specifically, we looked at how numbers of police officers impact crime. This is one of the most popular theories in the United States, and I know in many other countries, that people examine when trying to ascertain what impact different public policies have on the crime rate. In the United States, from 1990 to 1999, the number of police officers in the U.S. rose 28%. From 2000 to 2012, the rise in the numbers of police officers started to slow, but still increased by about 3%. It then fell by 5% in 2013, mostly due to budget shortfalls. The reason why the number of police officers in the United States grew so rapidly in the 1990s was because of the crime rates in the 1980s and very early 1990s. Specifically at the federal level, the 1994 crime bill provided millions of dollars for states to hire additional police officers to fight crime. Since the 1990s, there has been significant research looking at whether numbers of police do impact crime. Our findings indicate that increases in the number of police officers do impact crime, however, only modestly. Our research indicates that this increase in the number of police officers in the 1990s had a downward effect on crime in the 1990s, likely between 0 and 5%, and very little, if almost no, impact on crime in the 2000s, likely because of a plateau and subsequent slight decrease in the number of police officers during that decade. So if you are a policymaker and you're looking at your budget, we've been asked, is it worth it to invest in police officers? And it seems with this research and other research that hiring police officers can have an impact on crime, but it certainly doesn't seem to make a huge, significant impact on crime rates. We also examined the use of the death penalty on crime rates. One of the reasons we picked this theory is because in the United States, this is a very popular theory for the deterrent effect of crime. This idea that people will be deterred from committing very serious and violent crimes because of the possibility of being put to death. Empirically, capital punishment is too infrequent in the United States to have a measurable effect on the crime drop. This chart indicates how prevalent the death penalty is used. And on the left, this is measured by actual number of executions. So this is not in the thousands. This is 20, 40, 60. So you can see the United States actually doesn't use the death penalty with great frequency. Part of that is because of litigation at the federal level about the drugs that are used and cruel and unusual punishment and constitutional claims. Additionally, one of the reasons that we think we see such a significantly low impact on the crime rate from the use of the death penalty is if you think about a criminal, someone who's about to commit a very serious and violent crime, when considering the effect of capital punishment on the potential commission of that crime, the potential offender needs to think about a lot of things. There's the possibility that he will be caught. There's the probability he will be charged. And then there's the probability that he will be convicted, the probability he will even receive the death sentence, and then after that, the even lower probability that this person will be executed. So as a deterrent effect, it doesn't really resonate with practitioners and researchers. After multiplying these probabilities together, the potential offender realizes a very small probability of execution actually occurring. We also looked at unemployment rates. When talking about crime rates, unemployment rates are often one of the most examined theories for why crime may go up or go down. unemployment has fluctuated in the US in recent history. In the 1990s, unemployment steadily declined. In the 2000s, unemployment fluctuated but saw a steep increase after the recession of 2008. Theoretically, unemployment could have a positive or a negative effect on crime. On the one hand, higher unemployment may lead to an increase in crime, especially for profit and property crimes. On the other hand, the higher unemployment rate may decrease criminal activity because there are potentially less items to steal. Academics have also theorized that unemployment increases incentives to commit for-profit crimes, and it can increase depression or feelings of despair that could lead one to commit more crime. Our regression analysis in our report modeled unemployment, and we found that decrease in unemployment in the 1990s was responsible for about 0 to 5% of that decade's crime drop. And unemployment in the 2000s was responsible for a very slight, almost negligible increase in crime during that decade. We also examined the theory decrease alcohol consumption. Alcohol consumption slowly but steadily declined from 1980 to 2000 and has gradually and slightly increased since then. The National Partnership on Alcohol Misuse and Crime reports that 40% of state prisoners convicted of violent crimes were under the influence of alcohol at the time of their offense. This report finds that decreased alcohol consumption does decrease crime, and a decrease in per capita alcohol consumption led to about a 5 to 10% decrease in crime during both decades. And specifically, we were able to come up with this number by measuring beer consumption. We were not able to get the state-level data we needed for measuring wine and spirits. One theory that we examined that's a very controversial theory in the United States is lead in gasoline. In a widely cited 2007 paper, Amherst College professor and economist Jessica Reyes linked removal of lead from gasoline after the 1970 Clean Air Act to the precipitous drop in crime in the 1990s. After passage of the Clean Air Act, gasoline manufacturers began to remove lead from gasoline. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this theory, lead, used as an octane booster, is a highly toxic metal. Exposure to lead has been linked to lower IQ scores. It can also lead to cognitive and behavioral problems, as well as aggressive behavior. The first generation of individuals not exposed to lead in gasoline, which happened from 1975 to 1985, reached the most common violent crime committing ages in the 1990s. Reyes and other researchers have found that lead is connected to aggressive behavior and behavioral problems because it affects the brain development of children. We did not draw a conclusion on this theory, however, because we could not secure complete state-by-state data on this variable for 1980 to 2013 as we needed for the economic regression. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in the United States does not collect data on the amount of lead in gasoline at the state level. However, although this theory is very controversial, it is possible that lead played a significant role in the 1990s violent crime rate. but then again, lead would have played a much smaller role in the 2000s, between 2000 and 2013 crime rate, because there was really no dramatic change in lead rates after 1985. So we did look at 14 different variables. I'm about to speak to you about another variable, about a policing tactic, but before I do that, I wanted to just show you this slide that indicates our most significant findings. Specifically, our incarceration finding indicates that increases in incarceration were responsible for about 5% of the crime decline between 1990 and 2013. So what this means is that, yes, incarceration can impact crime. But when we looked at the numbers from the 2000s, incarceration's impact on crime has significantly slowed to the point of diminishing returns that indicate that incarceration has had almost no effect on crime in the years between 2000 and 2013. Other factors besides incarceration that our findings indicate played somewhat of a role in the decrease in crime. I will skip CompStat for now because I'm about to speak about that, but higher income, Americans' income rate has steadily increased, and that finding indicates that higher income reduces crime about 7.5%. It's a very exact statistic, but likely between 5 to 10%. Decreased alcohol consumption has a significant impact on crime. Increased police numbers have somewhat of a modest impact on crime. An aging population also had a modest impact on crime. And our findings about the aging population specifically look at the most popular crime committing age, which is really between 18 to 24, according to most research. What is happening in the United States is that people are living longer and also having fewer children. So the cohort of young people under the age of 30 has been significantly reduced, and we think that that may impact crime rates slightly. Additionally, lower unemployment has a slight impact on crime. One of our most significant findings focuses on a police tactic called CompStat. CompStat was widely introduced in the nation's cities in the 1990s and 2000. Although different departments implement the management technique in different ways, the general objective is the same: to implement strong management and accountability within police departments to execute strategies based on robust data collection to reduce and prevent crime. This is data-driven policing. It's really very much a management technique that uses a system of accountability to hold managers and supervisors accountable for how they fight crime. Today in the United States, CompStat is now used in at least 41 of the 50 biggest cities in the country. On this slide, you can see a sample report from the New York City Police Department, and that is 1 week of CompStat statistics. And you can see they list murder, rape, robbery, felony assault, burglary, grand larceny. And this is the type of data that sophisticated police departments in some of the biggest cities in the country are using in their CompStat meetings. And specifically, the New York City Police Department has bi-weekly CompStat meetings. Some jurisdictions have CompStat meetings once a week. It's really a management technique using data to hone in on where crime is occurring in an attempt to pair resources with criminal behavior and activity. These are a couple of city examples. This is Dallas and New York City, and the vertical line indicates the year CompStat was implemented in those cities. And you can see that crime was reduced in these cities after they implemented CompStat. And we controlled for other factors when examining and analyzing our results. So for instance, lots of things could have been happening in these cities that had absolutely nothing to do with CompStat, such as changes in population, changes in numbers of policing. We controlled for all of those factors and variables in order to achieve these results and numbers. Specifically, why did we look at CompStat? There are a lot of different policing techniques, such as hotspot policing, community policing. We chose CompStat because there was data from 1994 until 2013, because we had 2 decades worth of data. We were able to aggregate the data and work with the data. Additionally, it is very hard to develop a proxy for policing techniques. So for community policing, for example, in the United States, there's really no one definition for community policing. Different police departments in the same state may think community policing means a very different thing. Some jurisdictions, community policing means putting more patrol officers on the street, walking the beat, talking to people. In some jurisdictions, community policing is having more police officers in certain neighborhoods, in cars, patrol cars, not talking to people. So it was very hard to compare community policing across jurisdictions. CompStat, on the other hand, is a little bit more academic and tends to be defined in a very similar way across jurisdictions, even though it can be implemented differently. So because we looked at numbers of policing and the specific technique of CompStat, what works in policing, and in the United States, this is a very controversial and talked about topic right now for many reasons. The takeaway here is that more police, better managed, can reduce crime. So our findings indicate that a sheer increase in the numbers of police can contribute to the crime drop, but what's even more impactful and significant is how you use those resources and those tactics. And using police officers in a combination of data and accountability seems to significantly reduce crime. So policing and policing tactics are